Word came out yesterday that Bryce Harper had some interesting things to say to Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, in an effort to make the rounds. We've covered on Nothing Personal, going from clubhouse to clubhouse to clubhouse. 30 teams he wants to meet with every year. God bless him. It's a pain in the neck. But he finds a way to bang out a few in Florida, Arizona during spring training. Then you do some around where you can be quickly in the Northeast. You can get road teams who come to visit New York. There's a whole panoply of ways. You try to get three things done at once. If you go to a particular city, maybe announce an all-star game or try to work on some public financing, we can all make our schedule efficient. The commissioner was meeting with the Philadelphia Phillies and doing what he does 30 times a year. Hey guys, it's Rob. Good to see you. I told you I was going to try to be more accessible to you and have you see that I'm normal and a good guy. But by the way, man, we need a cap. Now, of course, Rob is way more subtle than that. Rob is way smarter than that with his group of people and Dan Hallam and Noah Garden and Pat Courtney. Way smarter than that to just walk in and say, hey, Bryce, are you paying attention? Is Scott Boras listening on the phone? If you think Scott Boras isn't involved in the argument that happened between Rob Manfred and Bryce Harper, then you're not paying attention to how it goes in baseball. Because Rob Manfred is given the talk. He's talking about exactly what he's done in every other clubhouse. Here's the business issues in baseball right now. Here's what we're trying to accomplish over the coming 12 to 24 months. Here's the benefits to you. He's taken it to the people. Go back to the last CBA and remember what we talked about. The Boras people voted against it as members of the executive council. The rest of the team reps voted in favor. So when Rob is going to clubhouses to try to stir up interest in his platform and in trying to avoid a lockout and get a deal done, who's the player who's going to stand up and say, I disagree? A Scott Boras player. Man, you didn't need to be Dick Tracy or Scooby-Doo to figure this out. So a Scott Boras mouthpiece, Bryce Harper, second only to Max Scherzer, stands up and says, literally, from what we hear, nose to nose, and says, get the F out of our clubhouse. Really nice. Very respectful. To which Rob Manfred replied, no, I think I'm good. I think I'll stay here. Thank you very much. Appreciate the offer, Bryce. You think that Rob Manfred doesn't know who Bryce Harper's agent is? You bet your sweet Bippy he does. You think that Rob Manfred is blaming Bryce Harper for what Bryce Harper did? Nope. Blaming Scott Boras, who clearly put him up to it. Bryce, you cannot let. You're a leader. You're a leader, Bryce. You're a veteran. You've got to stand up and show these kids. You've got to teach them. Scott Boras actually talked about why Bryce Harper feels strongly about a salary cap. This is Scott Boras saying, young people, young players need to talk with veterans like Harper. Harper has been fighting the consequences of caps his whole life. I'm sorry, but my stomach hurts, Coke. I may need a break. I may need to get out of the chair because I'm nauseous at anyone reading Scott Boras' comment and believing that it's possibly true that Bryce Harper has been fighting the consequences of caps his whole life. He's obviously referring to when he signed as an amateur with the #1 overall pick. He must be referring to the salaries that he paid as a minimum player that he was paid, or his arbitration money, or what he got in free agency, where there are no caps at all, and he cashed in with the Philadelphia Phillies. I can't imagine what else is on his mind, but something that Scott Boras wants us to have sympathy for Bryce Harper, who's doing it for the youngins. You know, the thing is, when you have the commissioner come into your clubhouse, and we've all had it for one reason or another. Players are generally respectful because That's their job, to be respectful. Can you imagine if I just want to make sure we're all clear here, if one of my corporate sales employees went up to the commissioner and got in his face to talk about why his non-uniform pension or why his 401k or why the bonus structure on the team or why, and got in the face of the commissioner, do you know what happened? That person would get fired immediately. I'm the boss. I answer to my boss, the owner. The commissioner, who does answer to the owner as well, gets elected by the owner, but is revered in the industry as the number one person on the chain, regardless of who reports to who and who controls whose comp and whether or not that person actually gets voted into office. Forget that. Once you vote for Rob or once you don't, but Rob still wins, that's it. Players know it. Team employees know it. Everybody knows it. And Nick Castellanos was forced to talk about this entire thing because Scott Boras would only give that ridiculous quote, and Harper really didn't have much to say. So Castellanos was in the room when it happened, and he said, hey, it was an intense situation, no question. Castellanos wanted to diffuse the tension and stood up and said, hi, I've got more questions. Commissioner, is that okay? Turns out that Harper and Manfred may have shaken hands. Manfred may have called him the next day to say, hey, that was crazy. Why are we doing that? That doesn't make you look good or me look good. And it sure as heck fire doesn't make your agent look good. But Harper ghosted him. This is the rumor. If you're Harper and you get a call from the commissioner, it's actually in your best interest to take that call because you don't want the commissioner's office or any owners or anybody in management in any way thinking that they have found the way to get you quiet because, man, that's what they want. They don't want to hear from Boras clients anymore. And if it all takes is a little nose to nose and a little talk about the salary cap in a meeting, and it's going to set you off in a way that makes you look sort of silly because if you want to fight the salary cap, you fight it in collective bargaining. If you want to fight the salary cap, you don't give it the power that you're giving it. Strategically speaking, and I'm talking to you, Scott Boras, because you think you're running the negotiations. You think, although you lost all power on the executive council, but maybe you're maneuvering for a coup, whatever it is you think you're doing. Do you understand that the more baseball talks about a salary cap, the more they fight for it, that when eventually they take it off the table, you're going to have to give till it hurts in order to have that taken off the table? When maybe the intention all along was to not have it on the table? Are you paying attention to the possible motives of each side? Are you trying to understand why Rob is doing what he's doing, why Tony's doing what he's doing? Are you trying to understand why Scott Boras is doing what he's doing? I am. That's an easy one. Identifying what Tony Clark and Rob Manfred and what some of the owners and players are doing, that part, complicated, but doable. Trying to figure out why Scott Boras does what Scott Boras does, it's as easy as 2 + 2 = 4. When you work for baseball, you have to just be careful. When you work for any company, I've given you all my example, and you can criticize it all you want. You can't work for the Marlins and then root for the Red Sox. You can't do it. You can't work for Coke and drink Pepsi. You can't do it. You can't work for JP Morgan and wear Goldman Sachs clothing. You just don't do it. You can't do it. You have responsibilities to your employee. Mark DeRosa is a great guy. Mark DeRosa is going to manage the USA World Baseball Classic team in March of 26. He got himself into this story because Mark DeRosa, former player and a great managerial candidate, he warned the Phillies players, hey, That wasn't good what Harper did. Rob Manfred could retaliate. That word got out. So Mark DeRosa had to say he was kidding. That's what you do when you're trying to back out of something you said that hurts someone or could get you in trouble. You got two ways to go when you meet with your PR people. One, I didn't say it. Well, in this day and age, that becomes a little harder. Two, I did say it. You misunderstood it. Easy, because how can I know how you interpreted what I said? I can only tell you how I interpreted what I meant to say. And if you interpreted something differently, that's on you. You misunderstood. You can go that direction. That's a good one. Or you could go with door number 3. Dudes, I was totally kidding. That's what DeRosa did. He said I was kidding. Shame on me for thinking I had a better relationship with some of the players in there. Talking about players inside the clubhouse. 3 ways. The third one's funny to me. Once you see the reaction of somebody, oh, I was just kidding. Well, were you? Or are you only just kidding because of what has taken place since you said what you said? I think it's more like a after the fact, just kidding. Just think about it during your next conversation with somebody, and then you'll smile and think of nothing personal. The next time you say, oh, I'm just kidding, just realize why you're doing that. It's in reaction to the receiver of the first line who didn't receive it the way you wanted. I'm just kidding.